VOA correspondent Catherine Gibson joining us from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. How are things there, Catherine? And if you may, can you also tell us about the importance of the center in Philadelphia and the importance of Philadelphia itself, as Pennsylvania is one of the swing states?
Absolutely. So this is going to be a big moment in American history, this debate tonight. And we're here in Philadelphia, which, of course, is a huge center of importance for all of American history. Right behind me is something called Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution were both signed. The founding fathers of America were in this building behind me. It was the birthplace of the United States right here in Philadelphia. And so it's really important for this debate to be held at the National Constitution Center when so many important issues in American life are going to be debated between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. They're really going to be debating their very competing visions for the future of the United States. In the past few weeks, Kamala Harris has been making the argument that her campaign is full of joy, that she is looking forward for America, and she has that famous campaign slogan, "We're not going back," which is a very direct reference to the presidency of Donald Trump and the 4 years that he was in office. Of course, I've also been to the Republican National Convention. I've been reporting around the country, speaking to Trump voters. They want to go back to the time of Trump. They want those 4 years of the Trump presidency back. They've been telling me that they're upset about the economy and they're worried about a Kamala Harris presidency and what it would do for their economic bottom line. So here in this very historic spot for the U.S., we're going to see those competing visions play out.
Right. Catherine, also, this debate comes weeks after the assassination attempt on Trump. Tell us what kind of security facilities have been made in the area.
Well, this is, as always, a Secret Service event because we have a former president and a presidential candidate in this location. The usual heavy police presence, Secret Service, barriers all around. You have to show your media credentials to get even close in. And of course, as you can see, we're outside the Constitution Center. Getting into the actual location where the debate is happening is an even further layer of security. So like the Republican National Convention and the Democratic National Convention, very, very heavy security to make sure that there are no more incidents like that assassination attempt.
Absolutely. Now, stay with us, Catherine. I'm going to go back to Professor John Ports now. We talked the same question I would like to ask you. How is the assassination attempt looking at, and how is it influencing this debate?
You know, I think it has very little influence. I mean, it passed. It didn't change Trump's behavior and kind of how he approached the campaign. Many people thought that it might, but it really didn't. And so he's kind of back in his kind of mode of operating on the campaign trail. And so, quite frankly, I don't think it's had much impact at all.
Right. Now, after this, during the Republican convention, there were talks about Trump coming out as a different person. But are we going to see any kind of difference in his performance in this debate, that he's going against Kamala Harris?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, he has a bit of a history in debating women of trying to criticize them in various ways and try to, you know, again, as one of your earlier commentaries said, would kind of get them engaged in a free-for-all or back and forth. And so he does that particularly with women, but we will see whether he tries to do that now. You know, the fact that the microphones are muted when it's not the speaker's point to speak works to his advantage. And I think that the Harris camp realized that, because that was certainly the case in the debate with Biden. And so that's why they wanted to have it back on. But the Trump campaign decided no, it's to his advantage to actually not have that, so that he can continue, so that he doesn't speak out of line as much as he typically would.
Would that be a disadvantage or advantage to Kamala Harris?
Well, I think Kamala Harris wanted to try to get the mics on the whole time because it would give the potential that Trump would start to kind of throw comments back and forth and interrupt her, and which is what he has and then he gets kind of downgrades the whole experience. but he didn't. They wouldn't agree to that because the original agreement with Biden was that there would be no mics, mics would be muted. So I think it actually works to Trump's advantage, like it did before. But again, Kamala Harris is a very different debater and than in a better situation than Trump than Biden was a couple months ago.
Right. Susan, I'll come back to you. Now, how important do you think this debate is looking at the presidential elections as it might have been before Biden quit?
Yeah, it's very important in a sense that it's not going to really move the needle for Trump supporters or Harris supporters, but it is going to be very important, not only for the people that will be writing the story tomorrow, like journalists and newspaper editors, on how Kamala Harris managed to sell herself to the American public. I can't stress this enough. We don't know much about her policies, and she's running a campaign on joy and change. However, online right now, when you look, it seems that users have pointed out that the issue section of her website, which just went up about 24 to 48 hours ago, has metadata with language using President Biden's issues and essentially promoting his agenda. So it's going to be very challenging for her. This is going to be very important, notably for those independent voters, for women voters, for those that sort of want an alternative to Donald Trump, but don't know whether or not they can trust Harris or not. That's going to be very important. But Harris ultimately, because they're so neck and neck, needs to move the needle drastically if she's going to get those electoral votes come November.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Electoral College, the votes there. It seemed to influence a lot. In 2020, we knew that Pennsylvania lost one vote. How does this all pan out? How does the Electoral College vote work? Can you give a little glimpse on that?
Yeah, so ultimately we have the national vote, the public vote, and then we have the general college. We have the electoral college vote, and candidates have to reach an electoral college state by state of 270 to ultimately win the presidential election. And so, that's going to be very important. There are certain states that we know will vote blue, will vote red, but then there are a number of swing states in the middle that they sometimes tend to vote Republicans, sometimes they tend to vote Democrats, and it's usually those states that ultimately, influence the outcome every year. And, we talked about the importance of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It appears is really going to be an important state moving forward, not only because of fracking policies that both candidates have, which are very different when it comes to the issue of fracking. And I know they're going to talk about that on stage, but also because Kamala Harris bypassed Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania for Tim Walz. So a lot of people will be looking inside the state to see, whether or not they want to support the vice president or not. Nonetheless, Pennsylvania, a swing state, very important. And, once again, part of that electoral college that we talk about that's very different from the popular vote here in the United States.